The sterile white walls of the medical facility hummed with a soft electronic buzz that made Commander Tolvek's damaged hearing organs ache. He sat in the uncomfortable metal chair, his 6 arms shifting restlessly as he stared at the small recording device on the table between him and the doctor. The red light blinked steadily, waiting for him to begin his story. Dr. Morlina watched him carefully through her large dark eyes. Her tentacle-like fingers moved over her data pad, preparing to record everything he said. She had interviewed many war veterans over the years, but none had requested as many postponements as this one. Something about the human wars had broken hearts of Commander Tolvek that 50 years of peace could not fix. "Commander, the historical archive needs your testimony," she said gently. "The younger generation must understand what happened during the human wars. Your account is important." Tolvek's mandibles clicked together nervously. His grey-green Karapochi bore deep scars that modern medical technology could heal easily. But he had refused treatment. The marks were reminders, he said, warnings that he carried on his body so he would never forget. "Doctor, how many species has the Coalition conquered?" he asked suddenly. 47 confirmed civilizations across 3 galactic sectors," she replied, consulting her records. "The Coalition's military superiority has been unquestioned." Tolvek finished for her until then. He leaned back in his chair, his primary arms folding across his chest while his secondary hands trembled slightly. The tremor had started during the war and never stopped. Medical scans showed no physical damage to his nervous system, but his hands shook whenever he thought about humans. "We had a perfect record, Doctor. Perfect. Every species we encountered followed the same pattern. First contact, evaluation of threat level, demonstration of superior technology, negotiation, and finally peaceful integration into the Coalition. Clean, efficient, predictable." Dr. Morlina nodded, encouraging him to continue. Humans were supposed to be routine. Intelligence reports showed a primitive species limited to one world. They used chemical propulsion for space travel. Their weapons fired metal projectiles. They fought wars among themselves over resources and territory. By every measurement we used, they were centuries behind Coalition standard technology. Tolvek's compound eyes focused on something beyond the walls, seeing memories instead of the present room. The first survey team reported that humans had simple names, not the complex designation systems that advanced species develop. No elaborate titles or rank structures we could understand. They called themselves things like Dal, Min, Hein, J, basic sounds. Primitive. We laughed about it in the briefing rooms. Some of our younger soldiers made jokes about fighting a species that named themselves like domestic animals. The Admiral called it a training exercise for new recruits. The old warrior's breathing apparatus wheezed as his respiratory system struggled with the stress of remembering. I had served in 12 pacification campaigns. I had seen species surrender after witnessing a single demonstration of our plasma weapons. Others negotiated immediately when they saw our ship configurations. The smart ones joined willingly once they understood the benefits of Coalition membership. Humans were different from the very first contact. Dr. Morlina leaned forward slightly. "How so?" "Commander, they didn't react like other species when our diplomatic vessel entered their solar system. Most civilizations would send their fastest ships to establish communication. Humans sent nothing. We waited in orbit around their moon for 3 full cycles, broadcasting standard peaceful contact protocols. Silence. Tolvek's secondary hands clenched into fists. Finally, we received a transmission from their planet. A single human appeared on our screens. Female, with graying hair covering the top of her head. She wore simple clothing and sat in what appeared to be a basic communication room. She looked directly into the camera and said, We know you're there. We're watching you watch us. When you're ready to talk like equals, we'll listen until. Then, enjoy the view." Then she cut the transmission. The commander's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of agitation in his species. No species had ever dismissed first contact like that, ever. Our protocols didn't account for a civilization that would ignore superior technology. The Admiral was furious. He ordered immediate implementation of standard pacification procedures. That's when we made our first mistake, Doctor. We assumed human silence meant fear. We interpreted their lack of response as primitive inability to understand the situation. We were wrong about everything. Dr. Morlina made notes on her data pad, capturing not just his words but his physical reactions. "What happened next, Commander?" "We selected their first colony world for a demonstration, a small settlement on a rocky planet they called Kepler Station, 3,000 humans. Mostly families and research teams, perfect for showing Earth what resistance would cost them." Tolvek stood up suddenly, his scarred carapace reflecting the room's harsh lighting. He walked to the small window that looked out over the Velthari capital city. His multiple arms clasped behind his back. "I still remember the names from the casualty reports. Sang, the colony leader. One, who ran their agricultural systems. Bin, their chief engineer. Hey, just a youngster helping in the communication center. Simple names for what we thought were simple people." He turned back to face Dr. Morlina, his compound eyes reflecting something that might have been regret. "Doctor, have you ever seen a creature smile while it dies?" Dr. Morlina shifted uncomfortably in her chair as Commander Tolveg's question hung in the air between them. The recording device continued its steady blinking, waiting for his answer to his own terrifying question. "No, Commander, I have never seen such a thing," she replied quietly. Tolvek returned to his seat, his movements slow now, as if the weight of memory was pulling him down. "Kepler Station was supposed to be our standard demonstration. Show overwhelming force. Demand surrender. Accept their submission. 3 hours maximum. Clean and simple." His primary hands gripped the arms of his chair while his secondary hands continued their nervous trembling. The colony sat in a valley between two small mountains. Basic prefabricated buildings, simple farming equipment, a small landing pad for supply ships. Nothing that suggested military capability. Our attack fleet consisted of 12 heavy cruisers and 40 fighter craft. Standard overwhelming force doctrine. The colony had no weapons, no shields, no defenses we could detect. Intelligence estimated. Complete pacification within 2 hours. Dr. Morlina made notes as he spoke, but her eyes never left his face. Something in his expression warned her that this story would not follow the usual pattern of coalition victories. Admiral Kexamore ordered the demonstration to begin at local dawn. Psychological advantage. He said humans would wait to see our ships filling their sky. The sight would break their will to resist before the first shot was fired. Tolvek's breathing grew heavier as he continued. "I was aboard the command cruiser, monitoring communications. We expected panic broadcasts, surrender offers, pleas from mercy. Instead, we intercepted a single transmission from the colony to Earth. The human female called Sun activated their primary communication ray. She appeared calm, almost peaceful. Her hair was still messy from sleep, and she wore simple work clothes. She looked directly into the camera and spoke for words that I will never forget." The commander's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "Remember us, avenge us." Then she cut the transmission and walked outside to face our ships. Dr. Morlina's tentacle fingers paused over her data pad. She didn't attempt to negotiate. No negotiation, no surrender broadcast, no panic. She simply gathered the other colonists in the central square and waited. Torveg's compound eyes dilated as the memories grew stronger. Admiral Kexamore was confused. His tactical manual had no protocol for this response. He ordered a single warning shot too. Demonstrate our weapon power. The plasma blast struck a hillside 2 kilometers from the colony. It vaporized solid rock and left a crater 50 meters wide. Every species we had encountered understood the demonstration. It meant surrender now or face complete destruction. The humans watched the explosion, then turned back to face our ships. A male named one stepped forward from the group. He carried a metal farming tool in his hands, something used for digging in soil. Torvik stood again. Pacing to the window as his agitation increased. One raised that primitive tool above his head and shouted something in their language. The translation software identified it as a battle cry. Then he ran toward our landing craft. One human, armed with a farming implement, charging 12 coalition heavy cruisers. Dr. Morlina looked up from her notes. What did your forces do? We killed him, of course. A single plasma pulse. He was gone in seconds. The commander's mandibles clicked rapidly. But something happened that our tactical computers couldn't explain. When one died. The other humans didn't scatter in terror. They didn't surrender. They cheered. The recording device captured the long silence that followed as Tolvek struggled with his memories. A young female called Hay picked up Wone's farming tool. She couldn't have been more than 50 years old. She looked at our ships, smiled, and continued Wone's charge. We killed her too. Then another human picked up the tool. Then another, each one running towards certain death, each one smiling as they died. Dr. Morlina Esteta path slipped from her tentacles. They kept attacking. Not attacking. Doctor, sacrificing. Each death bought the others time to evacuate their young, to hide their research data, to prepare defenses. A female named Bin used her own body to shield others while she armed some kind of explosive device made from mining equipment. Tolveg's voice cracked as he continued. She looked directly at me through the ship's viewport as the blast consumed. She was smiling. Doctor, smiling as she died. Because her death meant something. The colony fell in 6 hours, not 2. We lost 47 soldiers and 3 fighter craft. 47 coalition warriors killed by humans using farming tools and improvised explosives. The commander returned to his chair, his scarred karapochi gleaming under the harsh lights. Admiral Kexamura filed his report as a successful pacification mission, but privately. He told his officers something that chilled us all. He said we hadn't fought soldiers or warriors. We had fought farmers and scientists and children. And they had made us bleed. Dr. Morlina retrieved her data pad with shaking tentacles. What happened to the survivors? 17 humans escaped into the mountains. We spent 3 more days hunting them with tracking equipment and aerial surveillance. When we finally cornered them, they had fashioned weapons from mining tools and farming equipment. The last one we captured was a male called Dal. He had been shot twice, but was still fighting with a sharpened metal bar, as our medics treated his wounds. He looked at me and spoke in perfect coalition standard language. He said, "You can kill us all, but you can't kill what we've taught you about us." Tolveg's hands stopped trembling for the first time since the interview began, 3 months later. Of declared war on the coalition, Commander Tolvek stared at the recording device for a long moment before continuing his testimony. Dr. Morlina noticed that his secondary hands had stopped their constant trembling, replaced now by something that looked almost like fear. This response came faster than our computers said was possible. He began, his voice carrying a new tension. Our intelligence networks had calculated that humans would need at least 2 years to develop into Stellar military capability. We were wrong by 23 months. The old warrior shifted in his chair, his compound eyes reflecting the room's harsh lighting. 67 days after Kepler Station. Human ships appeared in coalition space, not exploration vessels or diplomatic craft. Warships. Dr. Morlina looked up from her data pad. How many ships, Commander? 7 vessels in the first wave. They entered the Velkari system, where our border patrol maintained a standard defensive position. Our sensors detected them at maximum range, and Admiral Exner ordered immediate interceptor deployment. Tolvek's mandibles clicked softly as he recalled the event. The human ships looked wrong. Doctor, every species we knew built vessels that followed certain principles, smooth curves for efficiency, elegant weapon placements, decorative elements that showed cultural pride. Human ships were different. Different how? Brutal, angular, built. Like weapons instead of vehicles, the commander's primary arms gestured as he tried to explain. No wasted space, no decorative elements, no consideration for comfort or beauty. They looked like someone had taken the concept of violence and shaped metal around it. Dr. Morlina made careful notes as he continued. Our interceptor squadron consisted of 24 first attack craft, standard protocol called for, demanding identification and escort to the nearest diplomatic station. Commander Yextall opened communication channels and broadcast standard first contact procedures. The human response was immediate and simple, a single word in their language. No. Tolvek stood and walked to the window again, his movements showing the stress of reliving these memories. Commander Yextall repeated the standard diplomatic request again. The humans responded with that. Same word. No. Nothing else. No explanation. No negotiation. No acknowledgement of coalition authority. Our tactical computers couldn't process this response. The situation fell outside all known protocols. Commander Yextall contacted Fleet Command for instructions. The recording device captured the soft whistling sound Tolvek made when agitated, a noise that translated roughly to nervous laughter in his species. While we waited for orders, the human ships began moving, not toward our forces or away from them. They spread out in a pattern our computers couldn't identify. 7 ships taking positions that made no tactical sense according to our military doctrine. Dr. Morlina leaned forward. What happened next? The lead human vessel transmitted a message. A single individual appeared on our screens, male, wearing simple grey clothing with no visible rank indicators. He had dark hair and calm eyes that seemed to look directly through the camera at each of us personally. Tolvek's breathing apparatus cycled heavily. He said his name was Jin. Just Jin. No titles. No military designation. No formal introduction. He spoke in perfect coalition standard language, which should have been impossible since first contact had occurred only 67 days earlier. Jin looked directly into the camera and said, "We are here to learn about your military capabilities. You may cooperate or not. The choice will not affect the outcome." The commander returned to his chair, his scarred karapachi reflecting his inner agitation. Commander Yextall was outraged. He demanded that the humans submit to coalition authority or face the consequences. Jin listened to the entire transmission without expression, then simply said, "Thank you for the information." Then the human ships disappeared. Dr. Morlina's tentacles paused over her data pad, disappeared, vanished from our sensors. 7 warships, gone without a trace. Our tactical computers showed empty space where they had been moments before. Commander Yextall ordered full sensor sweeps, but found nothing. Tolvek's compound eyes focused on the recording device as if speaking directly to future viewers. We thought we had intimidated them. The Admiral's report stated that human forces had withdrawn when faced with superior coalition military presence. We celebrated another successful demonstration of our power 3 days later. The humans returned. The old warrior's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. The same 7 ships appeared in the exact same positions, but something had changed. The human call Jin appeared on our screens again. But this time he was not alone. Behind him stood a female with short black hair who identified herself as Siok, and another male who gave his name as Yin. Simple names, simple clothing. But their eyes held knowledge that hadn't been there before. Dr. Morlina waited as Tolvek gathered his thoughts. Jin spoke again, and his words changed everything we thought we knew about warfare. He said, "We have analyzed your shield frequencies, weapon configurations, communication protocols, and tactical responses. We have identified 17 critical weaknesses in your defensive formations and 3 exploitable flaws in your command structure." Then Siok stepped forward and added, "We have also studied the psychological profiles of your commanders based on their decision-making patterns during our previous encounter." Tolvek's hands began trembling again. Ian finished their statement. "You have 4 minutes to evacuate your personnel before we demonstrate what we learned." Commander Yextol ordered immediate attack. 24 coalition interceptors against 7 human ships. The battle lasted 93 seconds. The recording device blinked steadily as silence filled the room. When it ended, all 24 of our ships were disabled or destroyed. The 7 human vessels had not received a single hit. Dr. Morlina's data path slipped from her tentacles again. "How is that possible?" "Because, Doctor, we finally understood the terrible truth. Those 3 days when the humans had disappeared, they hadn't retreated. They had been studying us, learning everything about how we fought, how we thought, how we reacted under pressure. We weren't fighting an enemy. We were teaching one." Commander Tolvek's entire body shuddered as he prepared to continue his testimony. Dr. Morlina noticed that the temperature in the room seemed to drop, though she knew it was just her imagination responding to the fear in the old warrior's voice. "After the defeat at Velkari, Coalition Command realized we faced something unprecedented." Tolvek began, his mandibles clicking in distress. "High Admiral Murthic ordered immediate military escalation. 50 battle groups deployed across 12 systems, the largest military response in Coalition history." The veteran's compound eyes grew distant as he accessed memories he had tried to bury for 50 years. "I was assigned to Battle Group 7 under Commander Zeklin. Our mission was to establish a defensive perimeter around the Tolmari system and prevent human expansion into that sector." Dr. Morlina prepared fresh data files on her pad. "How did the humans respond to this escalation?" "At first, nothing. For 6 weeks, our sensor networks detected no human activity. No ships, no communications, no movement toward any of our positions. Command began to believe that our show of force had finally intimidated them into withdrawal." Tolvek's secondary hands clenched into fists. Then strange things began happening at our forward bases. Small things and important things, things that our security protocols dismissed as equipment malfunctions or personnel errors. "What kind of things?" "Commander, personal items moved slightly from where soldiers had left them. Food supplies in the mess halls showed signs of sampling, but inventory counts remained correct. Communication logs contained brief gaps that lasted only seconds. Maintenance reports mentioned tools found in different locations than where they had been stored." The old warrior stood and began pacing, his scarred karapochi catching the light as he moved. "Base commanders filed reports about these incidents, but headquarters classified them as minor operational issues, stress from extended deployment. They said, Normal adjustment problems for soldiers stationed far from home. Then we found the messages. Dr. Morlina looked up sharply. Messages. Someone had accessed the personal computers of various soldiers and left simple text files, always the same content. 4 symbols in human writing that our translation software identified as their word for. Soon, Torvik stopped pacing and gripped the back of his chair. The files appeared on systems that required 3 levels of security clearance to access, systems that our best technicians swore were completely isolated from external networks. Yet somehow, humans had reached them. Security teams conducted thorough investigations. They found no evidence of unauthorized entry, no signs of forced access, no indication that base perimeters had been breached. The messages simply appeared as if humans could move through our most secure facilities like ghosts. Dr. Molino's tentacles trembled slightly as she made notes. How did your soldiers react? Panic. The word came out as barely a whisper. Warriors who had conquered entire star systems began jumping at shadows. Soldiers started requesting transfers away from forward positions. Some refused to sleep alone in their quarters. Tolvik returned to his seat, his movements showing the weight of terrible memories. Battle Group 7's effectiveness decreased by 40% in 2 weeks. Not from enemy action, but from fear of an enemy we never saw. Then the human called Han made contact. The commander's breathing apparatus wheezed as stress affected his respiratory system. Han appeared on our main communications screen during a routine briefing. No incoming transmission detected. No security breaches identified. She simply appeared as if she had been invited to join our meeting. She wore the same simple grey clothing we had seen on other humans, short black hair, calm expression, eyes that seemed to look directly at each of us individually. She sat in what appeared to be the command center of a human vessel, but our sensors showed no ships within 50 light-years of our position. Dr. Morlina waited as Tolvek gathered the strength to continue. Han spoke in perfect coalition. Standard language. She said, "Greetings, Commander Zeklin. We have been observing your tactical formations and psychological response patterns. Your species shows remarkable consistency in defensive behaviors." Commander Zeklin demanded to know how humans had infiltrated our secure communications. Han smiled that terrifying human smile and said, "We didn't infiltrate anything. We've been here the entire time, learning how you think." Tolvek's hands began shaking violently. Then she did something that broke our understanding of warfare completely. She began naming individual soldiers in our unit, describing their personal habits, their fears, their behavioral patterns during stress situations. She knew that Sergeant Velkov always checked his weapon 3 times before going on patrol. She knew that Lieutenant Morgex had nightmares about his first combat experience. She knew that Commander Zeklin touched his family pendant whenever he made difficult decisions. The recording device captured the long silence as Tolvek struggled with his memories. Han explained that humans had been studying us for weeks, not our technology or our military tactics, but us as individuals. They had learned to predict our responses, our decisions, our weaknesses. Dr. Morlina's data pad nearly slipped from her shaking tentacles. How could they know such personal details? Because they had been watching us, living among us, moving through our bases like we weren't there. Tolvek's voice cracked. Han showed us surveillance footage from our own security cameras, images of humans walking through our corridors, sitting in our briefing rooms, standing beside our soldiers. During routine operations, we had never seen them, not once. They had been invisible to us while learning everything about how we lived, how we fought, how we thought. Then Han delivered the message that ended Battle Group 7's effectiveness. As a fighting force, the commander looked directly at the recording device. She said, We could have killed all of you at any time during the past 6 weeks. We chose not to because dead soldiers teach us nothing. Living soldiers teach us how your species responds to fear. Then she smiled again and added, "Thank you for the education." Class dismissed. Commander Tolvek sat in silence for several minutes after finishing his account of Han's terrifying message. Dr. Morlina watched him carefully, noting how his compound eyes had lost their focus, staring at something beyond the walls of the medical facility. The recording device continued its steady blinking, waiting for him to complete his testimony. "Doctor, do you know why I agreed to give this testimony after refusing for 50 years? He asked suddenly. Dr. Morlina shook her head, her tentacles poised over her data pad. "Because yesterday I received a message on my personal communication device, for symbols in human writing, the same word that had haunted our military bases during the war." His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "Soon." The old warrior's scarred Karapochi seemed to dim under the harsh lights as he continued, 50 years of peace, and they are still watching us, still learning, still reminding us that they remember everything." He stood slowly, his movements showing every one of his advanced years. "The Coalition High Command called for peace negotiations 18 months after the war began, not because we were losing battles. Doctor, we still had superior numbers, better technology, more resources. Then why did the Coalition seek peace? Because we finally understood what we were fighting." Tolvek walked to the window and looked out over the Velthari capital city. Every battle, every skirmish, every encounter was making humans more dangerous. They learned from every mistake we made, adapted to every tactic we used, and never forgot a single lesson. Dr. Morlina made careful notes as he spoke. The human negotiator. What was she like? Her name was Quan, just Quan. No military rank, no government title, no ceremonial decorations. She arrived at the peace talks wearing simple dark clothing and carrying a single data pad. Tolvek's mandibles clicked softly as he remembered. Our delegation consisted of 12 of the Coalition's greatest military minds, 3 diplomatic experts, and a full support staff. Quan came alone. She sat across from High Admiral Murthic and waited for him to begin the negotiations. When he started listing Coalition terms for human surrender, she held up one hand to stop him. The commander returned to his chair, his movements deliberate and careful. Quan looked directly at each member of our delegation, then said, "You misunderstand the situation. This is not a negotiation for our surrender. This is us explaining why your continued existence serves our interests." Dr. Morlina's tentacles froze over her data pad. What did she mean? High Admiral Murthic was outraged. He reminded Quan that the Coalition still possessed overwhelming military superiority. Our industrial capacity exceeded human production by factors of hundreds. Our territory spanned 47 star systems, while humans controlled only 3. Tolvek's compound eyes reflected something that might have been admiration mixed with terror. Quan listened to his entire statement without expression. Then she activated her data pad and began displaying information that our intelligence networks had classified as impossible for humans to obtain. What kind of information? Complete tactical analyses of every Coalition military installation, detailed psychological profiles of our command staff, precise locations of our secret research facilities, economic projections showing exactly how long our war effort could be sustained. The old warrior's breathing grew labored as he continued. But the most terrifying part was what she showed us next. Footage from security cameras throughout Coalition space, showing humans moving freely through our most secure facilities. They had been everywhere. Doctor, our shipyards, our command centers, our private residences. For months, Humans had walked among us like we couldn't see them, learning everything about how our civilization functioned. Dr. Morlena's data pad slipped from her tentacles as she realized the implications. They could have sabotaged everything, Quan. Smiled that human smile and said exactly that. We could have destroyed your industrial capacity, eliminated your leadership, and collapsed your economy at any point during the past year. We chose not to because destruction teaches us nothing about cooperation. Tolvek's hands began their familiar trembling. Then she explained the real reason for the peace talks. Humans had determined that managing a galactic civilization required certain administrative skills that they had not yet developed. The Coalition possessed these skills, she said. Your species excels at organizing large populations and maintaining stable supply chains across multiple star systems. These are valuable capabilities that we prefer to preserve rather than replace. The commander looked directly at the recording device. High Admiral Murthick asked what would happen if the Coalition refused their terms, Quans. Expression never changed as she answered. She said, "Then we will learn those administrative skills through direct experience. The educational process would be unpleasant for your species, but we are patient teachers." Dr. Morlina retrieved her data pad with shaking tentacles. What were the peace terms? Simple. Humans would establish oversight of Coalition military operations to prevent future conflicts. Coalition civilian government would continue normal operations under human observation. All Coalition research and development would be shared with human scientific teams. Tolvek stood again, preparing to leave. The treaty was signed within 3 hours, not because we agreed with the terms, but because we understood the alternative. He moved toward the door, then paused with his hand on the control panel. Doctor, I have spent 50 years trying to understand what the Coalition encountered during those 18 months of war. My conclusion terrifies me more than any battle I survived. What conclusion? Commander, we didn't fight a species that was superior to us. We fought a species that treated every encounter as a learning opportunity. Every battle made them smarter. Every defeat taught them something new. Every victory showed them our weaknesses. The door began to slide open, but Tolvek spoke his final words to the recording device. If future Coalition leaders ever consider challenging human authority, show them this testimony. Show them what happens when you threaten a species that grows stronger from every wound you inflict. His scarred Karapochi caught the light one last time as he stepped into the corridor. They gave themselves simple names like men, Dal, Jin, and Quan. But they taught the galaxy that the most dangerous predator is one that learns from being hunted. The recording device blinked steadily in the empty room.